So Max in Illinois, pronouns are he, him, is a theist who wants to talk about morality and sentience. So Max, you're on with Paul and
Ooh.
Matt. How are you?
Hi, thanks for having me. The essence of my point is that is this question: if ants had the same sort of sentience and qualia as humans, would it still be all right to smash them when they invade your kitchen?
So first of all, I reject the notion of qualia. I don't think qualia is a real thing, but um, I also sentience is kind of complicated in how it's defined. Which I find it really interesting. You said if ants had the same sort of sentience that we had. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, but I will say that my view on morality isn't
Mhm.
tied exclusively to sentience. It's a social contract between individuals that are sentient. I don't know, but I want to make sure Paul gets in on this too.
I'm so far so good. I don't I'm actually thinking through the question of how I, because obviously we do tr- when we evaluate our morality, it's maybe not the best thing, but we do tend to treat creatures outside of humanity. We give them most empathy, and Matt, you know this as someone who deals with snakes and a lot of creatures that are very dissimilar to humans. Humans tend to prefer mammals to reptiles and reptiles to fish and these kind of things in terms of what kind of morality and the kind of treatment we're willing to give them. So it's very interesting, this question of would we be able to overcome our prejudice against an ant, or our consideration that an individual ant isn't necessarily that worth protecting if they had a level of sentience. Uh, Caller, can you maybe expand on that a bit?
Yeah. So basically, I have like a lot of ants in my kitchen, and they get everywhere when I try to cook food. So I was thinking about like as I smash them and kill maybe 50 a day, if they had I'm a theist, obviously. So if they had the same sort of how do I describe it? Sentience in the same like if they were like little human minds inside ants, but like they were like similar to us. They were just ants, and they experienced being ants as normal, but they had like the same sort of characteristics that we attribute to like other humans. Would essentially killing a bunch of them be immoral because yes, they look different, but we don't kill let's say Indian people because they look different as the last caller, right? So it's like how without someone telling you how to treat others, like a book, can you make this decision?
Well, my view of my view of morality is predicated largely on reducing harm and increasing flourishing. And I usually say increasing human flourishing because as a species, I think that morality is entirely grounded in our biology and our evolution as a social species and the benefits thereof that it has given us. I think that is where our instincts about and our intuitions about morality have come from. So you raise excellent questions. Um, I think that we would have to probably, a better morality would extend to more species than our own. The question I'm grappling with is whether or not me as an individual would be able to extend my, even though I grant that a better morality would probably extend to more sentient species than just my own, if I would be able to overcome those prejudices, as I also have killed several ants this year. Um, an excellent question. You said you're a theist.
Yeah, that's right. I'm a deist.
Is that correct? S- Oh, you're a
Yes,
deist.
it is.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I was wondering if maybe you were trying to talk about the nefesh in the Old Testament, right? The soulishness that some Christians and others who are Abrahamic religions want to say that God actually gave this nefesh to other fuzzy fuzzy, for lack of better words, creatures that relate to humans like horses or whatever. that maybe they have some version of a soul, and that kind of thing. I'm glad you're not going that route. I don't know. I think my answer would have to be, I hope that I would be able to expand my morality to give greater consideration for something that is going to, in essence, suffer more. But I don't know if I would be perfect enough to do that. Matt, where do you land?
Yeah, my take on morality is, I'm fine with the notion that ants might be sentient, and I've seen things that suggest that bumblebees present some characteristics that we would probably describe as sentience. And if you only describe sentience as like awareness, um, or the ability to sense and feel and that sort of thing, just where you're adding just the cognitive ability of like conscious of oneself. Um, I'm happy to extend that to pretty much every living. I'm not even sure that there aren't some plants that might qualify as
Mm.
sentient in an incredibly limited sense, which is why I found it really interesting, Max, when you talked about, what if the ants in the kitchen were sentient in the way we are. Um, I can't say that it would make that immoral on its own, but I would think that if we knew and understood that ants were sentient as like in the same way we are, um, that would change the nature of the moral views. For me, morality is a social contract in the sense of I'm going to afford some rights and responsibility to other creatures. For example, Arden just got her first jumping spider as a gift this weekend, and it's the first time I've ever held a spider. Second time, I did touch a tarantula once, but this was a little bitty spider, and I let it crawl in my hand. And it's really cute, and it pretty much ended like we have this kind of aversion to inverts. Uh, as Paul was pointing out, we care about humans first, and then potentially other mammals, and usually the mammals that are cute or kept as pets end up at the top of the list, and then that gets extended out to other mammals, and then maybe some reptiles for some people like me. I'd rather hang out with snakes than bears, actually. But uh, it there comes a point where like jumping spider, I didn't consider it like other spiders, and they are brilliant. Like they're wicked fucking smart and virtually impossible to sneak up on because the way their eyes are situated, so they got 360-degree field of view. It's amazing. However, if we're talking about ending something's life, the criteria that we have for that, I don't think it's based on just sentience. I'm not quite sure. I mean, usually if you talk to like some animal rights activists and stuff, it's more about their ability to suffer, and so that seems to me to be a step beyond mere sentience. Um, I've had to
What if we give them
euthanize.
that
What if we give them what?
that they can suffer? What if we give them that they can suffer? Because my question is, what happens when, like Ella, like
Sure.
in Starship Troopers, for example, these like huge bugs you have that they can probably suffer. That is it still okay to launch a nuke and destroy their planet because they're a nuisance to us, for example, such as ants
Well,
are in the kitchen.
I think if they're on a planet, they're not a nuisance to us unless we're there. But setting
Well,
aside,
pick whatever hypothetical.
sure. So first of all, morality is situational, and for me, it's a social contract between, like, I have a different contract with Paul than I do with Arden, and I have a different contract with humans than I do with other animals. And as we get further and further from us, the contract gets weaker, in part because ants and spiders don't have the ability to communicate to us and let us know what they want. Hey, I'd like my rights. I'd like for you to not squish me, you know. And generally, the animal rights folks are like, yes, you idiot. Of course, they can't do that. They don't communicate with us like that way. But of course, they don't want to be killed. My view of morality isn't tied just to suffering. There are people whose view that is, and Peter Singer's uh, view repeatedly is about minimizing suffering. And while I'm in favor of minimizing suffering, I think that's one factor of several that get pieced together. In that my moral view is more complex and maybe inferior to Peter Singer's. I think it's superior. But to just look at the question, if ants have the same sort of sentience as humans, should it be immoral to squish them in the kitchen? I would say that there's a very strong case that that should, in fact, be immoral, that the contract we should have with ants would change if, in fact, they had sentience like us.
Right. And what about the sort of not usefulness, but convenience? Like I'm sure like an ant in the kitchen eating some crumbs that fall to the floor, it inconveniences us because it's disgusting having ants on your food on your plates. Is that warrant? Does that warrant it enough to do that? And it is like a very crazy idea because that's kind of like what the Nazis kind of probably thought too about the Jews and stuff.
Yeah. See, now we've crossed over into something that's beyond ridiculous, where we're engaged in a hypothetical about whether or not, if ants had sentience like us, would we view them differently? Yes. And now you're like, that's how the Nazis viewed the Jews. Well, how the Nazis viewed the Jews is completely separate from how they should have viewed the Jews. Jews are people. And earlier, when you said um, we don't just take out Indian people because they look different. Well, first of all, they don't look different from Indian people. Your statement of they look different already assumes a bias towards whatever it is that you look like or whatever it is that I look like, as if how we look is the criteria of who we are. But that's not what defines being human. A human is not how you look, and being a particular ethnicity also isn't merely about how you look. Gender isn't about how you look. It's There's more to it than this. If you want to talk about the Nazis and them viewing Jews as an inferior race, they were wrong, and that was immoral.
Okay. Um, but essentially, if these, I'm going back to the ants example. If these ants had
Probably best.
everything everything same as people, it's just that they're just ants. Uh, doesn't that mean the morality is kind of like arbitrary in the sense that like if some Americans don't kill horses and eat them because we like how they look, and historically we've used them more than eaten them, but people in
So
Central Asia have
you've
no.
described a scenario that may or may not have a moral assessment. The fact that one culture might kill and eat an animal that another culture doesn't kill and eat doesn't necessarily make it a difference in morality. Um, I have no, like, I don't kill and eat horses because I don't have any horses and I don't have any need to. Um, but if some sort of dystopian society thing arrives and I need to kill and eat a horse to survive, that horse is going to be dinner.
Can the same thing apply to humans? Like if you crash in the Andes and then you have to wait for a rescue over winter, you don't want to starve to death.
There are situations and circumstances where that's happened and where people made the decision that if whichever one of them dies first, the rest of them should eat them in order to prolong their life. There's a difference between using the resource and killing the individual. And the contract that I have with other humans is different from the contract I have with horses. Um, but so, for example, I've squashed spiders many times in my life. I'm not going to squash Arden's spider, not because I think it's an immoral treatment of Arden's spider, but because the spider is Arden's. The harm there isn't so much in me killing a spider. The harm there is in hurting something that someone I care about loves.
Yeah, Max, you asked if morality isn't somewhat arbitrary, and I think we've been affirming all along that it absolutely is. There's concentric circles about what we care about, and we can't really help that. So we're gonna care most, and it's just basic tribalism, right? We care most about ourselves. We care, then the next circle is our immediate family or our loved ones, and then it's our generally our tribe. This used to be geographical, but now our tribes aren't necessarily geographical. And so maybe your city and your nation and your ethnicity or whatever, but we just can't help that we care more about what's closer to our inner circle, what's most like us. Um, and things get further away, they're less like us, and that's what I was attempting to describe before. That just that is the way it is, and I don't think either Matt or I are going to argue that morality isn't arbitrary in that way.
I wouldn't use the word. I don't like the word arbitrary because it almost feels like you have no reason. It's
or
not arbitrary. It's
subjective in that
biased.
way.
We are
Okay.
biased and subjective, and our bias is towards us, and but it's not arbitrary. It's because
Mm.
we are basically the descendants of people who survived and grew because of building communities, communicating with others, because we chose to prioritize. I mean, we probably did. We kill Neanderthals? Did we wipe out a competing species? We exist as the descendants of those who made these decisions. Doesn't mean anything at all about whether or not those decisions are right. My moral foundation is, well, you can Google superiority to secular morality and find a talk that I gave where I talk about you can begin with really simple foundations of life is generally preferable to death, health is generally preferable to illness, pleasure and happiness is generally preferable to pain and sadness, and that there are occasions where even those foundational principles don't prove out. Our former uh, coworker here, Dave Warnock, who did the Dying Out Loud show, has been dying of ALS for several years now. And I've had other friends who suffered from illnesses. I'm a huge supporter of death with dignity. And so one of my former friends ended his life on his terms rather than continue suffering. And I fully support that. I want to be able to do that if I'm ever in that position. Um, it's pretty important. And the reason that, I mean, people in chat are talking up how you got to thinking about ants and that led to, cannibalism and Nazis. Um, what's really happening here is Max, like many other people, was trying to figure out, okay, where do I draw the lines and why? And I draw a variety of lines for a variety of reasons, but I'm also not beholden to. I mean, you said you're a deist, so you're not. Right. I got that right, Max? You're a deist, so you're not advocating for any particular religious doctrine?
Yeah, I'm not. I don't think we should use like a book written a long time ago to base our policies now.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know that I have that much more to add on that. You're going to figure out where you draw lines, and I think most people tend to draw lines based. I hate to say that morality is an evolutionary byproduct, but it is in the sense that everything about our psychology and who we are, those are evolutionary byproducts. But it's not like I don't ever want to portray it as if evolution had a particular moral goal or any goal at all, because that would be inaccurate. But who we are is the result of all of our ancestors and who survived and why. And it leads to both our biases that are biased positively for our success and our biases that are negative both to our success and to the success of other animals. We could blow up, um, we could destroy the world between not addressing climate change problems and potential, nuclear weapons and other things. We could absolutely take out the planet, or at least, really, really, really do some damage. And not to quote Jurassic Park, but yes, life will probably find a way, and some new form of life that's hopefully better than us will begin to thrive in maybe a million years.
Right. Yeah, this is a very profound idea, and I'll definitely give it some thought. But I don't really have anything else to add to this
Cool.
discussion at this point.
Thanks, Max.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call. Bye bye.
Yep. Keep thinking. It's really weird because I don't know if you did the same thing, Paul. I talked about this years and years ago. I walked down at a revival at the age of 5 and accepted Jesus into my heart and was just a Southern Baptist kid with a couple of excursions to Pentecostal churches, all the way up until I was about 30, somewhere in that neighborhood. And then when I found my way out, I had a pretty good crisis, which is everything I knew or thought I knew about morality came from a particular interpretation of the Bible. And so the first thing I did is, okay, if I'm done with Christianity, I'm done with that interpretation, and I'm done with that book, what is my foundation for morality? Is murder wrong? Is murder immoral, and
Right.
why? I did something that I don't think too many people ever do, which is, why is this act something that I do think is immoral? Do I have a good reason to think it's immoral? Should I think it's immoral? Am I likely correct that it's immoral? What the hell do I mean by moral? Whereas prior to that, it was, thou shalt not kill. Okay. Da-da-da-da-da.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
did you have, how was your
Christianity
crisis?
kind of gave us that ability to abdicate our decision making, right? Like we could, if I wanted to know whether it was okay to pirate music or something, right? Something I could just go to the Bible and find out stealing was wrong, and this is ultimately stealing. So there's no gray area. It's just wrong. There's so you didn't have to think of these things through. Well, you just had to know your references and look it up. I had the exact same crisis you had. It was ultimately building then, okay, what are my values? That Because you can't make a decision about whether something aligns to my values unless I actually define for myself what these values are going to be, absent of God. And that's so I referenced that briefly. I'm still searching all along, but it has something to do with at least reducing harm and increasing flourishing, among humans, and at least I can use that as a framework. The other model I often use is like, if everyone acted if everyone did this, took this action, I'm thinking about, would the world be better or worse place to live? Is another heuristic I kind of try to use now. But I'm with you. When I didn't have the Bible anymore to remove that decision making process, it felt very heavy, and it did take a couple years for me to feel comfortable in that skin.
Yeah, it's really, I mean, it's a difficult thing, and I don't want to slight people because the easier road is, I mean, it's obvious that you call it the easier road because it's easier. It strikes me as, how much different would my life have been if I hadn't found my way out? If I was still kind of going through on autopilot of, here's what I've learned about what this book says, and I'm just going to go with it, and didn't question beyond that. It's I don't know. It's a weird struggle that I think about quite frequently. If I don't think there's a quote from Bertrand Russell that is, it's a wise thing now and then to hang a question mark on things you've long taken for granted. Um, it's an incredibly important sentiment, and it's one of the things that, I mean, I don't take a lot of pride in me or what I've done, or when I come across like a 13-year-old that found their way out of religion, I'm like, what the
Absolutely.
hell took me so long? And kudos, you're awesome. I'm the big dummy that took years and years. But I don't feel that way. I don't feel it. I didn't get smarter. I don't think that theists are stupid. I think some of the callers calling in to defend stuff are fairly stupid.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jimmy Snow, executive producer of The Line, and the rumors are true. Forrest Valkai is, in fact, a hostage in my basement. If you would like to contribute to his freedom one day, you can do so by supporting us over on Patreon or becoming a channel member. There are specific tiers for specific shows or the channel at large. You can also send us super thanks. Those are great. You can like, comment, and subscribe. Also, fudge the algorithm. Go to one of these things. The algorithm doesn't matter. It thinks it knows you better than we do. Better than you do? I know you better. Hank. There's a bunch of people named Hank. I just freaked way out. Okay, go to one of these.